Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Holly Gibson, Senior Product Specialist at UDA Technologies, joined by my colleague Jordan Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And we are excited today to bring to you a workshop focusing on how to give your team the most up-to-date plan sets with the new plan versioning for Redline 2.0. If you're new to Construction Online, Redline is our plan room and plan management tool built right into Construction Online. And we're really excited to show to you today some of the newest features available for how to manage plan versions and really always ensure that your team is on the most up-to-date current set of plans, eliminate confusion, and really streamline that process of plan management for you. Now, Construction Online, of course, as many of you know, helps almost 700,000 of you all over the world manage your projects every single day. And more, what we're seeing as such a critical part of that is that plan management process. So we're really excited to walk you through Redline 2.0 today.
Yeah, so for those of you who are joining UDA Technologies webinar for the first time, we really love interacting with our audience. So those of you who have set some time aside to join us today, we really want to make sure that this webinar is focused on providing you the information to make your company or your team the most successful it can possibly be. So with that in mind, take a look at the GoToWebinar panel. You'll find there's a section for questions there. Holly and I will be responding to the questions that show up along the way. If it fits in and we think it would be a great question to answer live. We'll also be joined by our colleague Sydney on the keyboards, not the instrument, but the actual computer keyboard. She'll be answering questions, flagging questions for us to take a look at as the webinar progresses. So please, if you haven't yet, open up the questions panel. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your company, and really why you're interested in Redline and what we can show to you today. We have a lot of exciting things planned to show off, some new enhancements that are hot off the press as of this week and last week. For those of you who are joining us, you'll see this is a follow-up for our earlier reveal of Redline 2.0, but we're really excited to dive in today and show you some of the new version control and version management options that have just become available.
That's right. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, Jordan, you mentioned our previous webinar. We did do a workshop for you guys a couple of weeks ago that really focused on loading your plans into Redline Plan Room. Some of the things that we were doing for you from an automation standpoint, from an AI or machine learning standpoint to really help get the most out of those plans and documents that we're loading in. Today, we'll take a look at that as well as really dive into a little bit more of the plan management, what to do after that first set of plans, what happens when you get revisions, how can you make sure that there's no confusion about what is the most recent sheet or drawing for a particular set of plans. So we'll really walk you through that entire process today of management. Now, of course, the first thing that we'll need to do is actually jump into a project. So with Redline Plan Room, those plan sets are always going to be project specific. So we've loaded into my Construction Online account, and we'll actually head over to some of the active projects that I have available in Construction Online and really start building and adding to our plan set here.
Yeah, I actually was speaking with a client roughly a week or two ago, Holly, and he was telling me that it's a really tough challenge to overcome to give his team the most up-to-date sets out in the field. He said that far too often he's calling his guys and finding out they're building off of an outdated plan set, or they're building off of some plans that they printed out maybe a week or two ago. And sometimes, you can go through a rapid series of revisions. In fact, some of the sample documents we were looking at had 3 or 4 revisions within a period of a month. Mm-hmm. And so this is really something that our clients are dealing with right now. And I think what we're about to show off today is really going to help cut down on that challenge or to make it a lot easier,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I mean, of course, we want tools in place to manage those changes or things that come up. But really, the goal here of working off of those current sets of plans would be to eliminate as much confusion and need for change as possible, and manage that change as early in the process as we can. I know with the situation that you're describing, that's going to result in a lot of time spent and a lot of time lost. It'll result in, a financial impact, most likely to have to go back and redo some of that work. And of course, there are tools in place to manage cost changes and time changes, but we really want to avoid that if we can. And that's really what Redline can help you with. So I've selected my project here and we'll head over to my plan room. Now this particular project, we haven't loaded any plans in just yet. So we wanted to show you guys how to get started in Redline and some of the things that Construction Online and Redline Plan Room will be able to do for you right from the very beginning. So you'll notice what I've selected here in my plan room. It's going to default me always to the current set. So this is just letting me know that I don't have anything yet, so there's nothing current. We'll go ahead and load in some plans.
And the process is really straightforward. Once you actually open up the really, really large Add New button, you can see there are a few options for adding plans in. Now, the only option we can select with a brand new project that doesn't have any plans loaded just yet would be to create a new set. So we'll do exactly that.
Yeah. So let's say this is our set that's issued for construction. So this might be our first sort of official set that we've got. We'll default to an issuance date of today. If you happen to have received those a week or so ago and you're a little bit late getting them in, that's okay. You can adjust that. And then our next step is really just going to be to pull in those plans, kind of figure out maybe where you have them stored. You can even drag and drop them in if you like at this point. I'll just browse my computer. This particular set I've just saved locally here. So we'll go ahead and upload that for us. And you can see that it immediately goes to work for you and starts scanning through those PDFs. So our first step really is that it's going to scan for our sheet numbers, and I just need to take a quick look and review those before we can move on.
Yeah, this is where the magic happens. So a lot of the updates that we're going to be showing off today really center around and depend on the sheet numbers being accurate. So you want to make sure to glance through the set. You'll see that Construction Online is going to do a fantastic job trying to identify and find where the sheet number is, and it's going to try and select that sheet number for you. Now, with a lot of the sets that we've worked with, and we absolutely understand, you're going to be submitted maybe different types of drawings or different plans sent in by mechanical subcontractors or any other subcontractor or consultant out there. And what you might see is the sheet numbers won't always align, but if you do need to make some spot adjustments, that's really simple as well. Turns out since this set is consistent, it found every single sheet number for us.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing extra we need to do here. If we did need to make some changes to these sheet numbers, you'd be able to type that right in the box or choose new areas to scan by using some of the options on this page. But it did a beautiful job here, detected all of my sheet numbers. Now, one thing I think at this step it's great to go ahead and just say is that the sheet numbers is one thing that we really want to make sure are correct. In fact, you'll notice as we move on, I need to confirm my sheet numbers are correct here. That's because as we get into some of the next steps when we're looking at managing revisions, when you're looking at flipping through multiple sheets in a set, really the sheet number is always what we're going to key off of. So you just want to make sure that those are correct. Based on these, we can also do things like automatically detect tags that you might want to apply, or all sorts of things that you can do. The sheet number is important, so we do want to make sure that that's correct. Again, in this case, mine are. So we'll go ahead and move to the next step, which is just going to be scanning and reviewing those sheet names.
Yeah, so the sheet names, while they might be important, to give people an idea of what the sheet actually is for, don't really drive some of the automation in the background. So if you're moving through and you trust that your team is capable of referring to sheet numbers, perfectly fine. We do have some fantastic character recognition scanning tools, though. So if you wanted to give that a shot to speed up the naming process, you could tackle that as well. Or you could just, like the sheet numbers, type the name in yourself if you know what the sheet names should be.
That's right. Sometimes what we see, like with this set, is that every sheet might not necessarily even be named uniquely, so it will pick up what it can. If you want to try scanning for a different area, you can always just click this. The sheet name is informational, so it's intended to be a companion to your sheet number, just to give your team a little bit more information. So you can name these as you like, or you can go back and pull those names from from the sheets, assuming, that they're named and set up correctly there. Now, one thing that you can do as well, you'll notice that some tags were automatically applied during this step as well. What it's picking up on is really my sheet numbers. The A's are normally going to be part of my architectural set, so it goes ahead and automatically applies what tags it can. It turns out with this set that they're all A's, so this one is all architectural. If I wanted to apply some additional tags or make some adjustments, I can go ahead and do that here. So you've got a full tag set that's built in, and you can also manage and add other options to this. So if you have a certain way that you want to tag your plans, you can go ahead and set some of this up right now.
And the tags will come into play later on as well. You can actually filter down to specific tags within the current set of plans. So if you have a specific way you want to view the plans or filter down that doesn't quite fit into our standard tag conventions, please, by all means, that's exactly why we built in a custom menu. And we could find that could save you a lot of time when you're trying to track down 3 specific sheets out of a set of 150 pages.
Exactly. So it's really up to you. You guys know your day-to-day process best. You can definitely come in and customize these and really be able to get some great information off of those filters as you get into managing larger sets of plans. Now, I think our sheets look good here. We've got numbers and names. Our tags are applied. So we'll go ahead and move to the next step, which is going to be scanning for those callouts. Again, this is that UDA machine learning at work. What this is going to do is scan through your plan set, whether you have 5 sheets or 150 sheets. I think that's what we looked at last time. But what it's going to do is scan through and look for those areas where call-out symbols are located on those plans. So anywhere you have a sheet that is linked to another sheet, it's going to detect that, go ahead and create the link so that you do not have to invest a lot of time doing that manually. That's going to be done for you. Now, in this case, 17 callouts were scanned, found throughout this sheet set and linked up for us. So that's definitely saved a good bit of time there just having that done. And my next step is just to go ahead and view the sheets that I've published. So this is going to bring me back to my current set, which is now populated with our first set issued for construction. You'll notice that these at this point are all V1 because this is the very first time I've loaded these in. And the plans are at this point ready to go in terms of being able to now, open them up and do any sort of markups or be able to view the plans, share those out with the team. We've really got our set ready to go at this point.
Now, a couple of things to note about the version sets themselves. They're going to come into play a little more when we're looking at actual comparisons between revisions, tracking down earlier versions of a plan. We'll talk about that in a moment. One of the most useful items, or one of the most useful things about keeping the plans collected together in sets, however, is that, one, you can actually use the filters option in the top right to change between different sets to see how plans maybe have changed over time. You can also use the version sets later on to modify or collectively remove sets of plans if you would like. We'll talk a little bit about the new version sets menu option over on the left in a moment. And of course, if you were in somewhat of a hurry or maybe you weren't as careful, later on we'll dig into editing the version set names as well. I know that's actually been something that people have experienced, not surprisingly, because sometimes you're in a hurry. There's a lot of pressure on you to actually get the plan sets out.
Right.
But we wanted to give you tools to clean that up as well.
Definitely. There's always, going to be those times where you need to go back and make some adjustments. So we've built some great options for you there. Before we start looking at revisions, because we want to really spend a little bit of time now that we've gotten our first set in, and start to look at scenarios where maybe we're receiving some revisions to some of these sheets and need to be able to manage that. One thing that you'll notice, again, my default view is always going to be the current set. So that means that unless I go back and choose to really purposely filter down to a specific point in time, a specific revision set, I will always be looking at the current set, whether that's all V1s, all V2s, or a mix of, ones, twos, and threes. It just kind of depends on a sheet by sheet basis. And so will your team members. So anyone who has access to this set, their default is going to be the current set. Now that includes, of course, your internal employees who are working with Redline Planroom. That is also going to include any external members that you choose to share this with. One fast way to do that, so a lot of times if we're setting up our project and really getting things set up to really begin that management process, we'd want to load our sheets in, establish our set, and then we'd probably want to go ahead and get that shared out to those extended team members. You can do that on a sheet by sheet basis if you want to, kind of choose what gets, if you want to choose what gets shared. But the fastest way is to come here to your set menu, go ahead and select those share settings, and then you can just choose to share with your team link members and or your client link members, so we can go ahead and share those out. Again, that's just going to share the full current plan set with those extended team members through their portal. So nothing special that you have to do outside of just adding that share setting. And that goes back to really keeping not just your internal team, but everyone else who might have access to these plans always with that most up-to-date set.
Yeah, I think it's a really convenient option. Once the actual sheet itself has become shared, any revisions to that sheet will then be shared out as the version that people are looking at. I think that really can cut down on the amount of rework required on a project because someone just didn't have the latest version of page A1.1,
Exactly. Now that we've got some sets loaded in, we're actually going to jump to a different project. So I have another project set up that we worked on with you guys a couple of weeks ago that has a set that's a little bit larger with a little bit more variety in terms of the different types that are included, the different tags. We can see how some of the filtering works. This set does already have several version sets that have been added in. So we're looking at that current set. You can see that most of these are V1, but if we scroll through the list, you'll start to see that some have been revised. They're part of a different set. So as I've received revisions here, I've been able to upload some additional sheets, automatically have those revisions created. And we can see that again, it's all current, so we're just looking always at the most recent one that we have for that particular sheet number. But you can see that there's a little bit of a mix here as we scroll through my set. If we want to go ahead and apply maybe some filters or tags here, we could look at, maybe filtering down by a version set, which you'll notice that filter come in here, or perhaps by tags, if we wanted to look at perhaps the electrical portion of this set. This one has about 150 sheets, so it's a pretty comprehensive set. And as we filter down, it's often incredibly useful to be able to isolate, well, I just want to see the mechanical stuff right now or just the electrical, so you can definitely come in and take advantage of some of those options. Now with this one, let's kind of walk through what would normally happen. So we've got, our initial set, but, inevitably as the project begins progressing, typically there are going to be revisions. Those might be related to, input from other parties, things that just need to be revised. It could be related to change orders or, answers to RFIs that you've sent out. So there's all sorts of reasons why you would see those revisions, but, it seems like if one thing's a given, it's that things are going to change. That's true with schedules. That's true very often with budgets. That's definitely going to be true with the plan set. So you want to have a way to get that updated information in the system very quickly. So let's just step through what that will look like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're adding updated or revised sheets, you'll notice that because we now have a full set of plans, there are two new options available. We absolutely want to select the option to add updated or revised sheets in this case because, we're not appending new sheets, which is what our helpful graphic here is trying to illustrate. What we're doing instead is we are actually going to be adding in updated versions to existing pages. And, we think that this update is really going to save a lot of time because it lets you update revisions in bulk. So it lets you take existing pages, whether that's a single PDF file, multiple PDF files, or one bulk PDF document that, let's say, is submitted by your design team or from the architect. And you can take that one file, multiple files, whatever it might be, and upload those and let the machine learning component, well, based around the sheet names, really take care of a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
It does. It does so much of the work for you, and it's compatible with both of those situations. So what we see is that when it comes to revisions, most of you guys are encountering one of two scenarios. Either you receive a full revised set, even if maybe only a couple of the pages have actually changed. When you receive that revision, you might get that full architectural set as a single file. Each of those sheets are included, and you just need to upload the whole thing again. You'll get V2s of everything. Sometimes what we see is that when it comes to revisions, instead of receiving, 20 sheets or the entire set, you really only just get that particular sheet number that was changed. So you have essentially loose single page PDFs. Like Jordan mentioned, it's going to beautifully handle both of those scenarios. In this case, what we're going to be working with, and we're just going to say revised set by Holly. So we'll keep it simple today. So we've got a revised set. We'll go ahead and select next. In this case, I've actually gone ahead and someone has uploaded those revised sheets for me to Construction Online, just as part of my project file. So I'm going to go ahead and import those into the plan room. Now, what I've received here for this particular for these particular revisions is I've received just some single page revisions. So rather than an entire complete set, I just have a few that have been sent over from the architect as individual sheets. So if we needed to go ahead and upload all of those, we can. We'll just pick a couple of these. We'll do 401 and 402. Pull those in, and then this will begin the process for us now of scanning these new sheets. So it's going to do the same thing as we saw in that initial upload. So we need it to go ahead and still scan through the sheets. It's going to detect those numbers and names for me, but it's also going to do something extra since these are V2s of these particular sheets. So now that the scanning is complete, we'll review the numbers and you'll kind of be able to see what I mean here. So in this case, it looks like we just need to make kind of a quick little correction in terms of what we've got here. This one is going to be a 402. And you'll notice that as those numbers are populated, one thing that we get a little bit different in this step is a revision history. So what I can see here is that based on these sheet numbers, which again are our unique way of identifying each of these pages. So that sheet number is what we're keying off of. And based on that sheet number, Construction Online and Redline is able to tell that this would be a revision. So this isn't the first time we've added a 401. This is actually at least the second, and sometimes you may have 2 or 3 revisions that you experience for a particular sheet. So you can always see the history over here now on this right hand side. It will let me know what the sheet was, what it was part of, when it was kind of what that most recent revision was, so I can see a quick little timeline of this particular sheet. And it's also letting me know that it will go ahead and create a revision for this sheet as part of this upload.
So if you think back to when we were first adding in the sheets on the first project we were looking at, this is why the sheet numbers are so critical. They can do, again, a lot of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to making sure that the sheets match up. And because it's such a simple reference, right? You're not having to type out the whole sheet name. It's pretty simple to adjust the sheets to make it fit in with the current set of plans and to provide updates in a timely and clear manner to the team.
That's right. Sometimes too at this step, especially with these revisions, you might want to reflect that in the sheet name. Again, you can scan back through if you want to have some different naming, or you can, type in a name that maybe is reflective of that revision. That'll be up to you. And then we'll move on to that call out step. So it will go ahead and scan this new one for call outs as well. In this case, these sheets didn't really have those applied, so that wasn't something that was needed at this step. And then we'll just head back to our current set. And what you'll start to see now as we go back through, so again, we're just right back to our most up-to-date set of plans for this particular project. But as we go through, you'll notice that 401 and 402 now also have those V2 badges. And that's just letting me know that the most current version I have for these particular sheets would be a V2. For most of the others, it's V1. And as we go through, you may see some V3s there. So whatever happens to be the most recent or current one is going to be the one that's shown in this list by default.
Right, and that's a really critical point. Whatever the most recent version of a plan happens to be will be the version that is seen by default. So there's not going to be digging into a folder to make sure you're finding the right version, or asking your team, hey, did you make sure that you pulled the out-of-date files out of the way? Or, hey, have we updated the files inside of the project for the updated plans, right? There's been a lot of shuffling that people have had to do in the past, whether that's, just inside of a desktop file management system, or even sometimes inside of the projects. We think that this system, however, is a much cleaner and much more obvious way of communicating to everybody what the most updated plan actually is and what it looks like.
Exactly. I mean, it's so much easier than them going in and trying to figure out in maybe like a Dropbox. Sometimes we'll hear people before they really get started with Redline Plan Room, they'll say, well, like currently maybe I'm just sharing these by Dropbox. But the disadvantage there is that you're really always then dependent on those extended team members, and that can often be a lot of people, of knowing which folder they're supposed to look in, or of the person who's uploading it really updating the folder correctly with the right names. And there's a lot of confusion that can happen, and this really just takes that confusion away. They go into the portal, they're immediately shown the most up-to-date set, and that's it. There's no extra steps, for you to do from a management side, and no extra steps for those extended team members. So that means that, subcontractors, other trade partners, other specialty contractors that you may be working with, your engineering team, your even owners or investors or clients, whoever needs to have access to this is always going to have up-to-date information without any extra work on your part. Now, if we want to go back and look at what each of those, kind of groups can see, there's some additional tools here that allow you to see. So this is your current set. You can always see what your Client Link and Team Link members have shared with them by just looking at your Client Link plans and or your Team Link plans. Now, in most cases, our recommendation would be that 90% of the time you're just going to want to share the whole set with those extended team members. They're always seeing the full current set of plans. If there are times where you maybe need to only share certain ones, then you can definitely come back and maybe pick and choose which set gets shared with which group. Maybe for your Client Link members, there are a few things you want to leave out, or maybe for some of those extended team members, you want to be a little more selective about what gets shown, or maybe there's some informational pages to your set that you just would rather leave out. So for whatever reason, if you need to make some adjustments, you can just choose to share them that way, when you're first setting it up. Or if you share the full set and need to come back and make some changes, it's super easy to do that just by using this Client Link Plan and Team Link Plan section. You can see that my sharing is turned on for all of these, but maybe if for whatever reason I wanted to just come back and I don't know, maybe I want to just get rid of a couple of these in terms of sharing, you just really switch them off. So it's so easy to go back and manage that. And you'll see now that, they're not all shared anymore. So that adjusts for you. You can really quickly kind of get a visual cue as to whether you have everything shared or not. And if you don't, it's so easy to make those adjustments and turn specific sheets on and off. The other thing that you have available, and this, by the way, works the same way for your Team Link members and for your Client Link members, so you can always fine tune that just within these tabs here. And then you also have a couple of additional tools that will allow you, when you're using Redline, to really see a couple of things. One, a history of what's been published, which is going to be located in your publish log. I think we maybe took a look at that in our last workshop, but this just will give you a quick history log of which file was uploaded, just what that actual file name was, when it was uploaded, who added that, what the status is. Sometimes if you get interrupted or close out mid upload, it actually saves that for you and allows you to come back and review and publish those at a later time. So that's always going to be available for you within that publish log. And then you also have, Jordan, what you were mentioning earlier is a way to go back and maybe fine tune your version sets, how those are named, and how those are going to appear.
Yeah, and in addition to being able to edit the name of the sets, let's say for one reason or another, right? You went to upload what you thought was a full set of pages and you uploaded a single sheet and proceeded through without catching what you were doing. You can also remove that version set as well if it was maybe a slight slip up or something like that. Now, do be careful because removing the set is permanent, but in some cases, you might want that move to be permanent. Now, another thing to note, if you remove a version set, it's also going to remove any of the sheets that were uploaded as part of that version set, which is probably what you would expect, right? But just do keep in mind that removal is permanent at this point. So if you don't intend, or if you're not intending on removing the pages, don't remove the set. Instead, edit the set. That way you can change the name. Maybe if you weren't paying quite enough attention, you slipped on the issuance date as well. You can adjust that as needed as well. If it wasn't today, maybe it was actually yesterday. You can make that adjustment as needed.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that you can do from here, in addition to making any of those edits or adjustments to the names or dates that you've got on those version sets, is that you do have a quick way if you're reviewing your sets, and especially, once you get pretty deep into a job and have, not 4 of these, but, 20 or 30 of those different sets, if it's been, I know sometimes we'll work with clients where the job is, a couple of years long and there are going to be a lot of revisions and updates. It's really a fast way to also go ahead and filter. So when you click through to any of these, it's just going to take you to a view that's going to be filtered just by that one set. So again, you can see what you've got, what you had as part of that particular revision, and be able to see that really quickly and easily.
Yeah, Holly, the new tools here, at least for the revision numbering system, have been out for maybe a month, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more than that. I was working with somebody the other day. They're already on version 10 of one of their plan sets.
Wow.
So, yeah. It was pretty interesting to see when I was speaking with them. So, it's not something that is a hypothetical. I mean, this person is already on version 10 of some of their sheets at least.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, and there's so much benefit that you get from that. I know we, get to speak with thousands of you guys every week and really love those conversations. Not just because we're invested in your success, and of course we want to help you, but we love hearing those stories. And some of the things that I hear about really run the gamut, from some of the miscommunication that you were talking about a little bit earlier, Jordan. I mean, sometimes someone will share with me a story and you can really feel sort of the pain of all the steps that you then have to go back and retrace, or all the corrections that have to be made. And not to really mention the fact that it can be expensive. I know we worked with a client a couple of weeks back who was really handling revisions and markups by printing out sets of plans for each team member for each project on a daily or weekly basis, redlining or marking those up by hand, and then printing the whole thing out again. I mean, it was a lot of, not just a lot of work, a lot of paper, a lot of expense, especially if you're having these done professionally. That can get really expensive. You'll always have, in most cases, probably a paper set or some paper sets that you'll work off of. That won't necessarily change in the very beginning, but it doesn't make sense to keep doing that over and over again. This just avoids so much of that costly miscommunication by keeping everyone always up to date. You just don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and it cuts... No, sorry, go ahead.
Well, one more thing I wanted to make sure that we were able to show everyone today is that, in addition to all of that benefit that you'll get from really migrating over and using the plan room to manage those plan sets, to really keep everyone on the same page. When you're uploading those revisions, you also have some really great tools for being able to see what's changed. So, that's kind of the other piece or the other question that comes with those revisions or those updated sheets is, well, what's different? How can I know that it was updated, but what's different? And sometimes it can be fine-tuning things that are a little bit different from the previous one, and so it's great to have a way to compare that information. So I wanted to show you guys a little bit of what that looks like as well. So you can see that we have this sheet that is just a good example of some revisions that are, it's not like everything's in a completely different location. Things have there's been a little bit of shift happening, and so this will allow us to see exactly what's changed. So if you ever need to go back and compare some revisions, anytime you see this V2 badge or V3, anything that's not V1, if you've got more than one revision, you can right click on that row, select compare revisions, and that's going to give us an option to choose which versions we want to compare. Now, one thing that's really unique about Construction Online compared to other systems is that most products, if they give you a way to compare revisions at all, are really only ever going to give you a way to look at two different versions at the same time. In Redline Plan Room, if you have 3 or if you have 4 or if you have 5, you can certainly choose to look at all of those side by side at the same time. You'll be looking at a lot of information, but you're not restricted as to how many versions you can compare. Now this one, of course, only has the 2 versions, so we'll look at that. I'll select that I want to see both of those. And then that's really going to take me into comparison mode that will allow me to see really what was different from V1 versus V2. What's going to be different here.
Yeah, so you can see that the changes are highlighted in red or blue depending on whether or not the difference is from the original version, which is in red, or the revised version, which is in blue. Now, if you want to find out, where the black lines are coming from, if you actually disabled, let's say the revised set, for instance, what we'll see is that this is showing us the entire original plan itself. And if we turn the revision back on, anywhere where there's an overlap, you'll actually see that the lines will become a black color instead of a highlight color, which is a really, really useful way of comparing and seeing, okay, well, what did actually change on this drawing? It's a really clever system because if you have more than 2 revisions that you're comparing, let's say you're comparing versions 1 through 4, for instance, just to see how things are changing over time, you can turn on and off different versions of the plan set to actually make specific comparisons from version 1 to 4, from version 1 to 3. Just to see how things have changed over time. We think this is a really clear way of demonstrating what is different, and we think that it's a really easy way to communicate with other people what has changed as well. That's why we've added in an export option, which you can find up in the top right, which will take this entire comparison sheet and output that into a very easy to see image file, which you can then put back into the project or share with the appropriate parties. But it really does a great job of highlighting what actually changed, right? This would be a little tough, I think, to look at and really make out when the entire drawing is in black and white, for instance. I mean, you might be able to make some comparisons, but this shows you some tiny details that have adjusted as well.
Well, and it's the details that matter, right? It's if the entire room or entire floor was going to be different, you're right, that's something easy to spot, but very often the adjustments that are being made are a little bit more detailed than that, and so we really want a way to be able to highlight that information and communicate that out with other people. One more thing to note as you're working with revision comparison specifically is that if you start to compare some revisions and you notice that the whole thing is nothing but red and blue, it looks like it's in 3D or something like that, sometimes everything is different, but a quick way to check would be to look at maybe some of the text that you have and make sure that that's showing up in black as well. It could just be that the pages are misaligned, that it was exported the second time around just slightly off alignment, and you can always adjust that here to be able to just adjust the alignment of, you want to usually choose something that's known to have not changed, align based on that, and then you'll have have that accurate comparison there.
Mm-hmm. Corners are a good place to start.
Definitely. So that really covers, I think, the bulk of what we wanted to go through with you guys today in terms of really uploading plan sets, managing those, getting those shared out to an extended team, always up to date, and then, of course, handling and managing revisions. I do see a couple of great questions have already come through. If you guys have any additional questions, this would be a really good time to go ahead and chat those over, and we'll try to get to as many as we can before we wrap up.
Yeah, Holly, while we're waiting for any other questions to come through, it seems like we've tackled most of the questions that would have come in as we were running through the different options today, which is always exciting to see. Someone had asked a question about the callouts and kind of how those might function. Maybe we can jump into the set from last week, which I know had a ridiculous amount. I think it had over 1,000 callouts or something like that, which is pretty exciting to see from a development achievement standpoint, and also thinking about how much time that would have saved our friends who are actually working on this project right now. Actually, this is a live project in the field, and we really think that the callout system helps teams jump back and forth between what they're looking at in one sheet and where it's connected to in another place contextually and maybe even spatially, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, exactly. So when you're working with that set of plans, sometimes what you'll have is, so this particular set, just to give you guys some context, was about 155 pages, 158, something like that. So it was a pretty comprehensive set that did have almost 1,200 call outs. And when we ran through that and kind of uploaded it and looked at it, it actually, it found 1,200 of them. So I'm thinking, okay, how much time would that take someone to do manually? I started doing some of the math and thought, well, okay, I wonder if I could assume, I don't know, maybe could I assume 2 or 3 minutes per call out? Maybe if they got on a roll, they could probably do it in 2 or 3 minutes per. Even still, with 3 minutes times 1,200, that's longer than a work week. That's somebody's full-time job for a whole week, and that's not really even giving them a whole lot of breaks. This guy's not drinking coffee. He's not going out for lunch. He's not doing anything. He's just sitting and making call outs all day, and that can get really expensive. So I really love this system. Of course, you can always flip through your pages here. So in the bottom left, anytime you're on a sheet, you can always get to other sheets, and you'll see their numbers and names in this menu here. So it's just an easy way. If you just want to advance or go to the next sheet or maybe the previous one, these arrows here will do a great job. But of course, very often what you see is that the plans need to be linked to a specific other plan, not necessarily just the one right behind it or the one right ahead of it, but something that is, basically, that's where you see, of course, those call out symbols is it will essentially say, okay, here's where we need to be linked to. And then once you do that, you're able to, of course, go ahead and have those links not only highlighted for you, so you'll notice that those are highlighted in red, but then when you go ahead and select one of those, it gives you an option. It gives you a preview, so you don't necessarily have to jump immediately there. It's going to first give you a preview so you can really see, okay, what is this? So this one is going to be linking to A300. What is that? So then you can see what the sheet is. And then if you want to jump to that sheet, you can just, click on the button. It's going to open up and take you to that particular sheet.
Yeah, something else to note here is it's going to open up the sheet in a new window or a new tab. That way you don't lose the place that you were at in the preceding sheet, so that you could maybe even pull one sheet over to your second screen to compare between the two, which we've seen in a lot of ways is useful for something like a detail or something like that. Now, something else to note, the callouts are not just for the specific callout symbols, but we've also found that our system will identify and place callout links over places where there are hyperlinks inside of the document as well. So if you're working with a particularly technologically talented or a group of architects who really have stepped their game up when it comes to using their software. Construction Online can read those hyperlinks and actually link the documents together for you as well, which could again save you some time. Now, Holly, I've worked with a lot of clients at this point at UDA Technologies, and the time estimate that it would take to go through and put every single one of these callouts is probably spot on. I don't think people would do this. I think that they would actually have just looked at the callout, had to use the menu to switch from sheet to sheet. So there's really something to be said here. Not only can you save the time that it would take to put the callouts in, but I suspect that the real time saving here is going to be using a plan management system that actually automatically links the callouts for you without any effort from an architect or a design team to go through and do it themselves.
Exactly. In fact, really the only effort that's going to give you the best result is the effort to just export those files out of their CAD program. In particular, so typically what will happen is when those files are exported from a CAD program, the format is usually going to be a vector PDF that really contains those additional layers of information that will give you the best results when you're looking at scanning for callouts or scanning for numbers or names. If it's not in that format, the other option is essentially a rasterized PDF, which is a flat PDF, image-based only, and that's normally what you would get if you were just maybe scanning them in, not necessarily exporting out of a CAD program, but just scanning in. That's where some of that machine learning comes into play, where really our team is very talented and have figured out what to look for on those sheets. Of course, the program is doing a little extra work there for you at that point. And if you run into a situation where for whatever reason a particular call out wasn't found, you can go back and add that manually. You'll just select the call out button, highlight over the area. That's not a call out. I actually found all of them on this sheet, but let's pretend there's one right here. Then you can just choose, which sheet do we want to link to, save that, and now you've created the link manually. So you can always set that up if you need to.
Yeah, and do keep in mind, callouts, it's a pretty specific term. It's doing something pretty specific in this page here. But I've already worked with people who are using the linking system in really creative ways. I've seen people taking different components of the project and linking it to other sheets where the two are interrelated, but not necessarily by a callout itself. So you can extend the usefulness of an actual sheet just by using the callout feature the way that it fits best for you. You could even take some of the different components or pieces of information over on a specific sheet and maybe link back to some type of spec sheet. Or you could link back into specific areas. There's really not a limit. There's not a rule saying that you have to use the link from the callout in one specific way. Our system's going to do a ton of heavy lifting for you for the actual callouts, but hey, from that point, the system is designed for you to make it the most for your company and for yourself.
Yeah, it really is. So, one thing too that someone had a question about here was just kind of the linking of not only call out, so linking between different sheets, but we've had a great question just about the linking between some of the other objects that you might have in Construction Online. So the question was really about linking files, which you can do. So if you have something, maybe stored as a document, you can essentially, take that document, drag it, drop it anywhere on this sheet. So you could put it on the corner, or you could put it, if it needs to be related to a specific location, that will show the attachment. Same thing with photographs. So a lot of people, of course, do a lot of documentation with pictures. We certainly love that. We think it's one of the easiest ways that you can do a great job documenting information on your project. But if you have done that, then you can just basically, again, take those pictures, drag them, drop them onto your plan, and you'll be able to see the previews right in line. So it's going to do a great job there for you. But it also allows you to create those objects while you're working in Redline. So essentially, let's say that we're looking at this plan and we think of something that needs to be done. You can basically choose anything. We'll just create a simple to-do. Maybe we need to assign someone to check up on some permits for us or something like that. You can basically just create the to-do, tag it to the plan, so just tap anywhere on the plan, and then you'll create that information right here in line. So maybe this is, check on material order. really could be anything. I mean, a task, something that needs to be fixed, a change order, anything you want to create right here on the plan, you can. Of course, you can go ahead and assign those out to someone. So if we want our friend Erin here to be assigned, we can, assign it a cost code. So maybe this is going to go under project management. So all sorts of ways that we can really flesh out this task, get it assigned out to someone. Of course, give it a due date. We'll say that that's going to be due tomorrow. So we'll create that to-do, which is now related to this particular sheet. And the great thing here is that when we go back into our Construction Online and go to the task or to-dos for this project, you'll now see that that's already been populated in my list. So again, no extra work on my part. And it is automatically going to have this little pin indicator, which is just my way of being able to see that this is on a plan somewhere. So if I click this pin, it'll automatically take me to the correct sheet, take me to the correct task or RFI or submittal. So it's a really great way of adding, some additional visual communication into those things, and that's going to be available in the portals as well. So a lot of people really use this for things like RFIs. They'll tag those to the sheet so that when someone, an extended team member goes into the portal to, view the RFI or make an approval on a submittal, they can just click a button and automatically be on the correct sheet, as they're looking at that information.
Yeah, it's an interesting use case. I've worked with a number of people now who are used to creating, say, a request for information, or they're putting together a submittal, something like that, and they're used to taking the page itself and using that as an attachment to the message that they send out. Typically, this would be through email or something like that, right? What I've found and said, though, is that there's an interesting use case here where when you have your team working together inside of Construction Online, and when the extended team that you're working with is also familiar with logging into Construction Online, which is really simple, you can start to do some interesting and useful things, like attaching the submittal itself to the plan in the location where it's, let's say, the request for clarification is arising, right? So instead of attaching the PDF and then waiting for that person to download the plan and then try to find exactly what question you're asking, like where on the plan the question is coming from, you can actually pin the question that you have to the specific spot on the plan and then ask the architect, hey, well, does this look right to you? Mm-hmm. should this column be right here? It looks like it's going to get in the way with some of this conduit we're trying to run. Like what's actually happening here, right? So it really opens up another level of conversation and another level of communication that would take quite a bit of time or a lot of paper and highlighters.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a lot more manual work. Let's see. I think it looks like Sydney's done a great job answering any of those additional questions that have come through. So I think that is wrapping us up for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. We're really, really excited to continue showing new enhancements and updates to Construction Online. We're sticking with the theme of the upcoming year. We're calling the new updates tagged with a 2.0 designation, but that really fits in with the theme of 2020. We have an unbelievable series of new enhancements, updates to existing features, brand new features that we're bringing to the platform, all coming in the next few weeks. And we want you there with us as we roll these features out. We really want you to see what's going to be available inside of your Construction Online accounts, or for those of you who are looking into Construction Online, what will be available in your Construction Online accounts, to follow along the journey and to see what we're bringing to you in the next few weeks. Head over to udatechnologies.com/events, where you'll find the next few videos in the series.
Yeah, that's right. We've got some really great workshops and webinars coming up over the next couple of weeks. In fact, next week on Thursday, November 7th, we're really excited to debut Construction Online 2020. In addition to some of the new features that we're adding, time tracking, instant communications, So much advanced organization that's coming to the platform. So I'm really excited to be able to share some of those changes for Construction Online 2020. The following week, we'll be diving into some really specific tools. So there'll be new advanced estimating on Tuesday, November 12th, which is again, really, I can't wait to share that with you guys. One thing that UDA Technologies has always really been proud to offer is the best estimating in the industry, and I'm really proud of some of the enhancements that we've added to Construction Online estimating. So you'll have a brand new 3-level estimator available to you, and that'll be really great to dive in and take a look at. We'll also be focusing later that week on November 14th, just looking at Construction Online Mobile, some of the new improvements, enhancements, new features and changes that we've brought to you on your mobile devices. And then we'll circle around and dive into time tracking the following week. So a really great November lined up for you guys. I hope you'll be able to join us. These are going to be great sessions. Really informative, and I think you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and this is the time, if you're preparing for next year across the board, this is the time to really follow along with us. We're going to be rolling out a lot of tools for your team, whether that's in the office or out in the field. When it starts to snow, if you're not able to do some work that you were planning on doing because of unexpected weather delays, well, not only will we show you how to track that inside of Construction Online here in the next couple of weeks, but you'll also be able to start thinking ahead for 2020 yourself. Think about the new things that you can bring to your team, places that you can really shore up to make 2020 the best year you've ever had. And we're excited to really be there with you along the way. So until next time, thank you all again for your time. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch with us and enjoyed learning about Redline. And well, we'll hope to see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.